Welcome to Business Middle East. In this edition, we're looking back at the first half of the year results. Contrary to expectations, the United States had mixed economic figures in the first 6 months. However, this wasn't seen as too disappointing. The last of these mixed figures, for example, showed unemployment declined to 5.3%. Fed statements periodically caused a wide range of fluctuations in the markets. Before we talk about the various factors, here's the story so far in 2015.
Though initial market expectations were high for the year, economic reports since the end of quantitative easing show estimates were well below predictions. Forecasts for US growth in 2015 dropped from 3.1% at the end of 2014 to 2.4% in March, according to a group of American economists. The most recent US jobs report had mixed outcomes. This became apparent as US stock earnings in the first quarter were lower due to a higher dollar value. The US added 223,000 jobs in June, 10,000 less than had been forecast. However, unemployment fell to 5.3% from 5.5%, due in large part to a sharp decline in labour force participation.
For more insight into the US economic data from the first half of the year, we're talking to Noor Al-Din Al-Hamari, Chief Market Strategist at ADS Securities Abu Dhabi. Let's start with the latest job report in the US. What was significant about this report?
The US jobs report showed positive and negative outcomes. The economy added less than expected jobs, while unemployment declined sharply as the participation rate dropped significantly. The most important point in this report was wages growth. The estimates were to rise further, but unfortunately it eased back to the lowest level since last year, which means that the slack that the Fed is talking about is still there. Therefore, the speculation for a rate hike in September has weakened further.
What are your predictions for the US economy in the second half of the year?
The outlook is neutral, especially after Janet Yellen's remarks on the latest Fed decision, as it failed to raise rates in June as promised, which raises new questions. However, it's worth mentioning that the rising US dollar is a negative factor for the economy and corporate earnings, which have already weakened and might even weaken further. This is what we'll be watching next week as the earnings season begins. Therefore, we would wait for further evidence before upgrading or downgrading our outlook.
لذلك سنبقي النظرة في الوقت الحالي مستقرة حاليا بانتظار المزيد من الأرقام والمزيد من الدلائل.
Now let's take a look at the Middle East earnings for the first half of the year, and we'll continue our discussion later. Despite geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and the sharp decline of oil prices during the first half of the year, the region's markets managed to remain stable, except for Egypt. Here's our story.
Events have had a significant impact on Middle East and North African markets, including turmoil in global stock exchanges and interest rate speculation in the US. Saudi Arabia made big gains in the first quarter, up by 21%, but began a downward turn due to the Yemen war. Dubai and Abu Dhabi markets have remained stable. However, they too slid at the beginning of the month of Ramadan. Saudi Arabia ended the first half of 2015 up by only 9% despite opening its market to foreign investors. Egypt's stock market fell by 6%, even with optimism after the Sharm el-Sheikh conference. The market saw losses after controversy over a new tax on capital gains in stock exchange transactions.
Noor, as we mentioned, MENA markets remain stable, but results from last year's first half were better. How do you explain this? And do you think that the Egyptian market could recover in the second half?
نعم خلال الفترة الماضية مر الاقتصاد
The
العالمي
global economy has had a choppy ride since the beginning of the year compared with last year.
الأحداث الكبيرة لكن بنفس الشيء
But the events during this year heightened uncertainty across the Arabic region.
حول المنطقة العربية نوعا ما لكن الشيء
The most important factors for the pressure on the markets are geopolitical and developments in the wars in Syria, Iraq and Yemen.
إن كان في سوريا أو العراق أو اليمن أيضا
And they might yet continue to affect the markets.
تأثير كبير على الأسواق العربية خلال العام الجاري وأيضا تزيد من حالة عدم اليقين خلال
As for Egypt, we still believe that the market will be able to overcome the current declines.
ممكن أو قادر على التعافي خلال
We should not forget that the situation in Egypt led investors to pull out their investments for a while, and with the loss of revenue tax, the market began to drop.
إلى سحب بعض السيولة من الأسواق فضلا عن مشروع.
However, the recent decline is seen as a normal correction before the upside trend continues.
هنا تصحيحا صحيا ويمكن القول أنه الاستمرار بالارتفاع مرة أخرى ممكن أن نشهده خلال الفترة المقبلة.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thanks, Noor. See you next week.
شكرا جزيلا.
هذا كان كل شيء.
That's all for now. Share your thoughts with us via Euronews' social network. Thanks for watching and see you next week.
شكرا لحسن المتابعة. إلى اللقاء.